Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. Gentlemen, you're very welcome this afternoon to this hearing. The first thing I've got to say is I congratulate you for putting together a representative body, because based on what we have here before us here and based on what we've heard in the past, there is no representative body to represent the rank and file. I've been involved in voluntary organisations for quite a lot of my young life. I never was involved in an organisation where somebody can be dismissed. Now, can you explain how somebody is dismissed from a voluntary organisation for me, please?
Do you want to take that, Mr. Griffin?
Yes, I suppose, Senator, I can only give my personal experience on my dismissal. And it happened through a grievance that Coast Guard management had with myself, and they actually asked for a boat review of Dunmore Coast Guard unit. That's how it all started. It was called a Coast Guard boat review. There was no talk about a grievance or anything, but it clearly became a witch hunt later on in the event, which became an investigation. After about 6 or 8 weeks into what was a boat review, the word and the terminology and emails to myself started having the word investigation into it. But for my own circumstances, it was management and management only came to ask me about questions relating to the Dunmore Coast Guard unit, and I answered them openly and honestly. And then they asked me, could they talk to my team members? We had 22 members of our team in Dunmore East at the time. And I said, of course, feel free to ask any of my team whatever questions you want to ask. And they said the questions will be based in and around what you had already been asked. And at my hearing, which was in the Ramada Hotel in Waterford City, I was allowed to bring my deputy officer. I could bring whoever I wished from my team, but I brought my deputy officer. So both myself and my deputy were clear that if those questions were put to any of our team, they would answer them in much similar way to the way we did, openly and honestly. But we found out afterwards that they couldn't express themselves in their questioning. It was a yes or a no answer. So if they were asked, in my case, was there non-Coast Guard members on the Dunmore East Coast Guard boat, the answer had to be yes or no. And as it transpired, we had the likes of Charlie Bird, and I actually wish him well if he's listening today. We had the likes of Charlie Bird and other RTE correspondents that would do programmes for safety at sea, and we would get permission from our Coast Guard managers. They were the only people, and then from time to time we would have wreath laying ceremonies. As you know, the South East Coast had tragedy after tragedy since 2006 in Dunmore East, and it was our unit that was responsible for recovering most of those people. And then we brought their families out to wreath laying ceremonies, which would always have been okayed by management. So, whereas I was able to explain that to management, when my team was asked, had they got somebody on our boat that wasn't of Irish Coast Guard personnel, they had to answer yes. And that was how they came after me. But at no stage in my hearing did I get the opportunity, or was I told, which I was a sitting member of CUIG at that moment. I was elected onto CUIG for my 3rd term in 2018. And at no stage was I told that I could rely on CUIG as a backup or to help me in my appeal process. And I was constantly given letters after email from a company called Graphite who were investigating me. But my investigation was through management only, and I don't think my voice or my fair hearing was expressed to anybody at all.
Okay. All of you are senior members of the Irish Coast Guard volunteer group. Could you give me some idea of where morale within the organisation is, given that you're all volunteers? I'm sure morale is a huge part of what keeps people going.
Yes, well, morale in the Coast Guard is, we would consider it to be at an all-time low. We would say that, many units are probably at half strength, if not lower. And even within those units, the number turning up for actual call-outs and for training is even less than that. And it's one of the reasons is, when a dispute happens, it causes a lot of basically, you get one member of the team may be targeted, whether it's legitimate or not. It then privacy and confidentiality come into any dealings between Coast Guard management and the volunteer, and they're not allowed to share the information with other team members. They become distant from the team members. The team becomes distant from each other, and probably the team can often split, and because there's no local resolution allowed anymore, because we've done that for many years. We have over 100, almost 100 years of service between us, and for many years we would have been involved in bringing teams together. And now that is actually not encouraged or even allowed now with the current Coast Guard management. Disputes are taken out of the local team. They're taken into either grievance complaints or volunteers are being put on a trial, and from then on, the volunteer has no right to any external assistance. Only a volunteer can sit with them as a witness, and the state can throw the full.
You have no right to the Workplace Relations Committee.
We have no right to the Workplace Relations Committee. We have no right to join a union. We can't go to the Ombudsman. None. And when we check it every time, we're told because you're volunteers, you're not a worker.
I wanted to ask just two more questions, if I may, Chairman. Firstly, the issue of life jackets. I've been around the country and I've spoken to people. If you're uncomfortable with this, please say so. But the R400 life jacket, I think it was called, was brought into service. How long was it in service before it was decommissioned?
Vincent.
The Rescue 400 was first produced to the volunteer in 2015, and a technical advisory group, a TAG group of local volunteers, merchant seamen, professional people in fire service, tested this jacket to see is it fit for purpose. And there was numerous complaints regarding the jacket as we tested it. As one individual said, when the jacket actually activated, it was like getting kicked by a horse in the face. It ended up with the individual having a black eye. It knocked off their helmets. It failed to open on numerous occasions on tests, and that was in 2015.
When was it taken out of service?
Very, very recently. It was recalled, I think I can remember, it's 2020 or 2021. It's very recently.
Okay.
But they knew about the failures after the accident in Kilkee. We raised the issues there and then. In the subsequent reports in Kilkee, that jacket didn't appear in any of the reports. Am I correct, Bernard? So we had issues in 2015 in February down in the National Maritime College where we sea trialed this in real world environments.
What jacket is in use now, Mr. Farr?
It's the Crew Saver, as far as I'm aware.
That's the RNLI one?
The RNLI.
And that was the precursor to the R400?
Yes, a similar type jacket. There is now an upgrade to that jacket.
Okay. The other issue that I have some concerns about is communications. Do any of you want to explain to me there are problems with communications within the organisation?
Typically, again, units were issued with a Tetra radio. Tetra would be a digital radio set, and this would be a nationwide communication system. Fire service, local authorities, Garda Síochána, ambulance service would use these radios nationally. The Irish Coast Guard helicopter crews use it, and also the coast radio stations, Valentia, Malin and Dublin would have it, to communicate with the helicopter and other emergency services. Unfortunately, the volunteers were issued with one set. This set was unable to communicate with other emergency services. You hadn't the function of dialing up the ambulance or on Garda Síochána, who could be on site with you to physically make a communication call, which is important to the information of a casualty. These sets then were withdrawn, and the function of these sets were eliminated from the volunteers. So we couldn't call the Coast Guard helicopter that was coming in to a helicopter landing site with a possible critically ill patient to update our own people what to do. Yet management have that function. A lot of money has been spent on the Tetra radio for the volunteer crews around the place, but they're in shelves, in cupboards, and they're not being used. We're denied the function that management have. We're denied the function that all the other emergency services have, or blue light services have. It's the constant dumbing down of our service is frustrating our volunteers. It's more administration.
If I may. Forgive me now for what I'm about to say, but ye will be regarded as cranks, as people who are disgruntled, have an axe to grind. The issues that have been raised here, the lack of representation for members. Members never asked for representation, that's what we'll be told. So in order to get even with the Coast Guard, you set up this organisation purely to be a thorn in the side of that organisation. Can you answer that question for me, please?
On many of our Zoom, could I just take it for a moment? On many of our Zoom meetings, Senator Craughwell, we would hear words like, "they destroyed my life." And this is from someone who would have spent 20 years of his life, was a senior in OIC and a South Coast unit. From someone on the West Coast who went to the high steps of the High Court, spent €11,000 of his own money, and was one of the few people to ever get a successful appeal hearing, but he had to pay for it. His words were, there was no place to go to for help, no one to turn to. So those are just two of the examples that I would use to...
How far back is that, Mr. O'Mahony?
This has happened in the last year, Chairman. I mean, and...
Could you switch on the microphone there, please?
It is on, actually.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the case is probably 2 to 3 years ago, but it was in the public, it was in the press, it's well known. And
the issues that you're talking about, how long have they become apparent in your day-to-day?
The man that said that they destroyed my life, when we were on with him, we spoke about it going back about 5 years, and he said, oh no, it went back further. So we were speaking in 21. So they go back to about 7, 8 years ago. And we know that most of us are dealing with it for the past 4 years.
Or email today, or yesterday.
Yeah, even yesterday we received another email from a unit in the southwest with exactly the same issues. These people have been interacting with the COEG for the past 5, 6 months, getting nowhere.
Do COEG have any volunteers on it?
COEG, they're all volunteers.
No, any would say non.
Yes, they just recently, Mr. Chairman, they have, but we don't know how we don't know the method of putting them on. We believe that there are 3 of them there now, but in the past, it has had no change in how they operate. The first time that COEG made contact with volunteers was in November 2021, after you had the Coast Guard in at the Transport Committee. And within a few weeks, Vincent is for one example, several others had contact from COEG for the first time in 21 years. And yes, so like statements like that, we had a statement from we had an email from one of the members of Doolin, who's now stood down, and in it he said to me that we need help. We don't know how to help ourselves. We only know how to help others. They know how to go out and help the public. They know how to rescue people and save people, but they didn't know what to do when things started to go against them. They need a volunteer representative association.
Sorry, Senator Craughwell.
Would it be fair to say, because I want to get to the bottom of this, would it be fair to say that the Coast Guard see themselves as, I'm talking about the permanent staff and the management, they see themselves as being responsible not just for the organisation but for the lives of members of the organisation, and that they would regard themselves as knowing what's best within a unit, and would you be challenging that view?
Well, I suppose, first of all, Senator, just to say that at no stage do any of the full-time staff come out on an incident call with us, and never have done. They would always turn up to an incident maybe a few hours or a day after, to run what they would be classed as incident managers. So for anybody here today that would think that full-time members of staff actually turn out to incident, that's a myth. Incident are turned out by volunteers and volunteers only, and always have been. Since the foundation of the state, since we were the Irish Marine Emergency Service and we progressed to the Irish Coast Guard in 2000, we were always the volunteers that turned out to the incidents. But on the question you asked about the morale, this is when we said to you in our opening statement that there's over 100 years of experience here. Any other organisation should embrace that 100 years and look for it to make the organisation a more professional organisation and to interact with us. And you talked about us being maybe just 4 disgruntled members. From day one, we have went to management time out of time, some of them who became very good friends of ours through the 23 years that we worked with them. And we said to them, this is so unfair what's been done. You have to listen to us. Our concerns are for the volunteers and for those that are coming after us, be it our sons or our daughters, or people are in our community that want to become Coast Guard volunteers. But they never and would not and refused to engage with our safety concerns. It was almost as if they thought we were getting too big for our boots. But we were getting very professional as life and in general the Coast Guard, as the 4th Emergency Service progressed. We were finding incident after incident was becoming high-tech and we were getting good at it. And they did not want to take our concerns on board. Morale is at an all-time low within the Coast Guard. I would go as far as saying the likes of Order Malt and Civil Defence and other organisations are finding it very hard at present to recruit volunteers. And I'd say that would go across Scouting Ireland and all of these organisations. But Coast Guard and Mountain Rescue is actually in the complete opposite because of the intensity of the work we do. We have volunteers constantly wanting to join the Irish Coast Guard and SEMRA and Mountain Rescue, but not in its current form. We're being told that as ex-officers constantly in our community. When the Coast Guard is back to what it used to be, we would love to come back on board. 11 of my members left when I was dismissed. I would say over 70% of Coast Guard units across this state at this very moment are operating or limping along on a little more than 50% of their volunteers.
Thank you, Chairman.
I
want to address, and I don't want an answer now. I have been led to believe that there is a member of CUAG who has an outstanding grievance that has yet to be resolved.
No names, Senator Cocker.
So I don't want an answer today.
No names.
I'd like you to take time and think about it, because this is an Oireachtas committee and you might communicate with the chairman and confirm whether that's true or false, okay?
Well, I can confirm it's not true as far as I'm aware at this moment.
No, I'm saying you go back to your organisation and come back to us on that. Okay, you talk about representing the members and you talk about a mandate. Where were you elected? When did the 900 members cast a vote to elect any of you?
I was elected personally from the OIC conference. That's where I was elected from as an officer in charge.
That's not a mandate from the 900. You told us there you have a mandate from the 900. You don't.
As being an elected officer, you mean?
No, you said you represent the 900
yes,
and that you have a mandate for it. You don't.
Where that came from and where we got evidence on that from is from the emails that was sent out sporadically to CUAG and to management, and I think some TDs and senators were CC'd or were going to be CC'd in on them, that they felt and they acknowledged CUAG as being their representative
Look,
body.
Mr. Murray, I've been in representational trade unionism for most of my life, and you have to be elected to claim you have a mandate by the majority of the organisation itself. You don't have that.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Okay, right. Let me move on. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you here today. When did any one of you ever represent a member of the Coast Guard volunteer group at a disciplinary hearing?
At a disciplinary hearing?
Yes.
We can't, not in the previous terms of reference, but now it has changed that we can help them as much as we can.
So up to this new terms of reference,
Yeah.
you had no representational role.
Only advisory capacity.
Yeah, but no representational
No, correct.
role. If I'm a volunteer facing a disciplinary committee up to these new things, I had nobody to turn to.
Well, what was happened up to this was you, if you did have, you turned to CUIG and you put it to them and they would make representations on your behalf.
Would they come to a hearing and represent me?
No, they could come sit down beside you at a hearing, but they couldn't advise you at the said hearing.
What if my grievance or my disciplinary procedure is a result of you taking a case against me? I'll hardly have you sitting beside me then, will I?
No, and you're totally correct, and that's why it has been changed to an independent of Coast Guard management, independent of anybody. So is the volunteer that needs the help is now getting the help.
I don't want to take up my questioning wrong. I think the work you do is fantastic, but we need to get to the bottom of this. And new terms of reference arising a few days before we have a hearing really, for me, stinks to the high heavens. I want to go on to training, okay? Who certifies your training? What external body certifies your training? Is it City and Guilds? Is it Solace?
It's totally different on different aspects of training. You've boat training, you've cliff training, you've drone training, you know. So I'm not sure. It is certified in all aspects, but well, I can speak about drones. It's the drone training provider who certifies everybody who's
No, I'm not talking about the training provider. No, I spent 25 years of my life in further education. An external certifying body, such as City and Guilds, such as the National Maritime College down in Cork, who certifies the training that takes place in the Coast Guard?
It goes back to what I'm not fully sure. Are you talking about boats? There's different.
Take any one of the modules, any one of them.
Boats.
Boats in relation to boats. Prerequisite to start boat training is what's called a personal survival training course. That's carried out at the National Maritime College in Ringaskiddy.
And it's certified?
Certified by them.
And every member goes through that?
Every member who wishes to step onto a Coast Guard boat has to undergo successfully that training.
So that's one of the modules?
It's one of the modules. In relation, sorry.
First aid would be a FEC training.
Aye.
It's a FEC training.
Would it be fair to say that you're self-certifying in some cases?
You're regularly assessed. Every 2 years you have to undergo.
Oh, no. You're not listening to my question now. Would it be fair to say that you are self-certifying? Because if I have to go back every 2 years, what external body comes in to look at my performance?
An individual who is affiliated to the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council.
And who's that individual?
It's an instructor.
What I'm trying to find out here is the training on the National Qualifications Framework? Can I be certain that if somebody is in the Coast Guard, they have training that is certified by City and Guilds, by Solace, by the National Maritime College, by a university somewhere? That's what I want to know. Do I get a certificate that says I have qualified as A, B, C or D?
You would get, for the first aid course, you would receive a FEC course, Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council.
Okay.
From the training provider.
Okay.
That would be recertified every 2 years.
Okay.
The personal surviving training techniques from the National Maritime College has to be redone every 4 years. Further development then within your boat training will involve the passing of ISA, Irish Sailing Association, basic levels, as in a crew, which would be a basic powerboat course. Then there would be an advanced powerboat course, coastal navigation courses. All of those would be administered by somebody certified by the Irish Sailing Association to qualify you in those.
Administered by, not certified by.
They would have to certify you as being competent. Obviously, there would be an exam carried out
Okay.
be it a practical or a practical and written combination exam.
You aware of the course that was put on for coxswains as it was a demo of what a programme would be like? I think something like 14 coxswains took the programme, and my understanding is 2 passed. I think another 4 were required for additional training but would pass, and the remainder failed.
I'm not aware of that, no.
No.
Right, okay, well, we got to get to the bottom of that one. Now,
We can get back to that.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was a pilot programme that was being done for coxswains, and the company that did it are no longer working for the Coast Guard, which is a matter of great concern to me. Now, you're there as an advisory group, isn't that right? So your job is to bring to management issues of concern.
Yeah.
The R400 life jacket. The tests were done in Ringaskiddy and Cork. You're aware of that? You're aware that the life jacket failed? More than one test. Yeah? Yet it remained in service for the best part of 6 years.
Maybe I can speak to that, Senator, as well.
Yeah, would you switch on the mic? Sorry.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that better?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. I carried out a test of the Rescue 400 life jackets with my unit while on a boat exercise on the 27th of October 2019. In the course of that test, the 4 life jackets that were tested failed to function correctly. I immediately withdrew the unit from boat operations. I contacted a senior member of the Marine Manager for the Coast Guard. He immediately grounded the boat. Within 3 days, the entire Coast Guard, all the boat units within the Coast Guard, were then grounded on the strength of that. The life jackets, I then submitted the life jackets to Coast Guard headquarters for testing, having ensured that a chain of evidence was available, as in there was no interference with them. They were forwarded to headquarters as they had malfunctioned. As a result of that then, as I've said, all boat units were grounded, and until such time as an acceptable replacement for those life jackets was in place, boat operations were suspended.
So when did the acceptable life jackets come?
I think it was approximately 3 months later. I don't have an exact date for that, but because of the volume of life jackets required, obviously there were supply issues, because they are a high-end life jacket, the ones that replaced the Rescue 400s. So
what would you replace with, Mr. Carroll?
Crew Savers.
Crew Savers, which is the RNLI one.
They would, yeah, they'd be the same specifications.
So, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot
No,
here.
you're okay.
You've clearly done your job, okay? You've
Yes.
found that these life jackets were dangerous.
Yes.
But my understanding is they weren't replaced until 2019 or 2020.
As I've said, there were a large number, and all boat operations were immediately suspended, given the fact that the
So
life
you're
jackets...
telling me the boats did not put to sea in 4 or 5 years?
No, it wasn't 4 or
waiting?
5 years. That occurred, the test I conducted took place on the 27th of October 2019, and I can't say exactly, but I would say for approximately 3 months boat operations had to be suspended until such time as a small quantity of the replacement jackets were put in place. They were brought to the units on a phased basis as they became available.
So let me get this right. We bought these R400s, and within a very short space of time, you, following a test, said these are not safe.
I think they were in service for a number of years at that point.
Right,
I think.
Well, I admire you for testing them, and I admire you for having the courage to stand up.
Why did you test them?
The system for life jacket servicing within the Coast Guard was, and still is, for a boat unit, they're allocated a number of life jackets, depending on the number of boats, depending on the number of crew available to the unit. Our old allocation was 14 life jackets. What normally happened for servicing, every 12 months the life jackets are serviced. They were sent prior to them being sent for servicing, a replacement set of life jackets were sent to the unit. So obviously the unit wouldn't be off the board for the time that the life jackets were gone. The life jackets were sent to us, the replacements, and I decided that as the unit jackets were going back for servicing, that it was a good time with people just to give them experience of a life jacket inflation, because it is quite a violent event when they do, and also it gave them experience in the water.
And did you test the ones that went back?
We only tested the 4. The other life jackets were then isolated as per the instructions of management.
And you were operating those for how long? How long were they?
They would have been operating for a period of 12 months prior to the test, or approximately.
And why wasn't that picked up by the Irish Coast Guard itself prior to them coming down to the volunteers?
I couldn't tell you.
I think they were very lucky, volunteers overall, that you did decide to do that manoeuvre with the 4 life jackets. And that was the question, and that's a separate issue. That's about procurement, and we brought that up in respect of the CNAG's report. We're not going to go into that in your particular.
Yeah, no, I think, Chairman, what I'm seeing here is that there is an officer who had concerns, had an opportunity to test something, had the courage of his convictions to stand over the failure of the life jackets, and probably down to you, we got the RNLI life jackets back. We had been using the RNLI life jacket before the R400 came into service, and now we're back on the RNLI.
I'll ask your indulgence. We have to go here by...
I'm going to finish off on this one.
I have 3 others.
Yeah, just finally, gentlemen, as I said, I come from a teaching background. I was involved in teacher trade unionism all my life. Within the Teachers' Union of Ireland, you have the Principals and Deputy Principals Association, and you have the Teachers' Union. What objection could you possibly have to a representative body being put in place for the men and women who serve under your command that would work with you?
Volunteers don't want them.
Sorry, the mic.
Sorry.
I'm deaf, I'm sorry.
It's our view that they're not wanted by the majority of volunteers, and that's the feedback we're getting.
So the proposal that they were putting forward today, which was, some of it would be that the 6 volunteers, non-officers, that they would be elected by the representative body, the volunteers body, onto CUAG, that there would be an alteration in terms of reference for CUAG to be more of a representative body, which we haven't seen the details of, but work has happened in that way. And then they'd look at the process in terms of appeals and whatever, which work has been done in that. So would you object to that? It was a way, because you'd have to accept, Mr. Murray, that the fact that this representative has been established, there's something not operating smoothly, whatever language you want to use it. These are, a lot of them appear to be very reasonable people. So could you see something operating that you see it with various other bodies where, so CUAG would still be the representative body, but you'd have a mechanism by which the volunteers could be elected onto CUAG?
We have a mechanism where the volunteers can be elected onto CUAG, as in 6 volunteers, 6 OACs.
Who votes for them, Mr. Murray?
Self-nominated.
No vote. Yeah, but remember now, in that situation, you could have a situation where you get 12 volunteers, and suddenly then those 12 volunteers, 6 of them are picked out of a hat, right? The question is, in terms of democracy and just looking at it, is it something that you would consider? Our role here is to be of assistance.
What I'd like to see is a formula put in place that the 6 non-OICs can be voted in by the cadre of 900 serving volunteers, and that's exactly what I intend to do as chairman of CUAG, is to make 100% sure that the volunteers have a vote on the 6 or 26 nominees, whatever it may be, that want to fill them positions. Yeah, that won't be an issue. That's not a problem.
When the terms of reference are fully fleshed out,
yes,
will you come back to us as to how exactly they're going to work, right?
Sorry, Chairman, can I just come in here? I mean, this is I'm shooting over your head now at this stage. I believe that there should be an independent survey of the 900 to determine what they want with respect to representation. There are questions that have arisen as a result
We'll
of
take
today
that up as a
need
committee.
to be taken up
We'll
directly with the
take that
Coast
up as a
Guard.
committee.
But look, I do appreciate you taking the time to come in here, and I do commend you for the work you're doing. Don't feel too hard that you got a tough time when you were in
Senator
here.
Craughwell,
That's the nature
you're
of the
going to
game.
get me killed. I have 3 people to come in.
Okay,
I have
it's all yours now.